When my wife Kim and I got married, we wanted to make sure that we had the same values, the same core beliefs, the same goals. The first thing on our goal list wasn't a big house, as most couples is. Our first goal was to build a business. And that's why we were homeless for a little while. We were actually homeless for about 3 weeks, which I write about in my new book, Cash Flow Quadrant. And people kept saying, why don't you get a job? I said, because I'm not looking for one. Good. What I was doing was focusing my brain and my emotions and my heart and everything and doggedly staying out there building my business so that I don't have to work in anymore. That once that business was up and running, I had 11 offices throughout the world, I could retire. So by the time I was 40, I was out of the rat race. I was finished. We didn't go and buy a bigger house. Our next goal was to buy 2 houses per year. So when Kim and I got together, our goals, our focus, our whole reticular activated system, building a business and acquiring assets or other houses, other businesses, stocks, bonds. A lot of people think net worth is important. Net worth is nothing because most of it is bogus anyway. What really counts is how much is your cash flow. When you evaluate a company, right, you're looking at its cash flow, not its net worth. Or what I'm looking at is, can I improve its cash flow? Because if I can improve its cash flow, I've improved the business. And that's the big mistake people make. They actually think their net worth is something, and then most times, because they've got liabilities listed as assets, their net worth is worthless. It's absolutely worthless. What really counts is this: how long can you live if you stop working today? My rich dad used to tell me, if you're 40 years old and can't stop working because you got bills to pay, you've mismanaged your money. It should only take you 20 years to become financially free, he told me. So that so many people today are still going out there looking for more money so they can buy new doodads and things rather than focus on the asset column. The reason I'm financially free is very simply in my brain is what my goals were. My goals were assets, and that's what cash flow trains you. It punishes you for making more money. It punishes you for buying doodads, and it rewards you for investing. And the purpose of cash flow is to train your brain to think like a rich person. And if it's hard and strenuous, it's because it's changing your thinking. So Dan, would you say something about why the game is hard for most people?
I've played it with a number of people, and the comments I hear is, it takes too long, or I don't understand this, why do I have to know this, or this is my favorite, I've got somebody else who will do this for me.
Right.
A great example is your average person who thinks of themselves as very successful, maybe making $100,000 a year, working for someone else.
Or they're self-employed. It means they can't quit. If they quit working, so does their business.
Right, exactly. So they're perhaps a professional, but they are the business. There's nothing over there that they could sell or liquidate. There's no other asset. Exactly. So they, in the terms of the world out there, are very successful. But they have 2 car payments and they have a house and they have
kids
a couple
in private school.
Exactly. Kids in private school and saving up and orthodontia bills, da-da-da-da-da. Those are the people who don't want to worry about the game. They've got somebody else worrying about their balance sheet. But actually what I can tell you is they've got somebody else watching their balance sheet for the other person's benefit. Be very careful of the advisors that you choose. Notice a couple of things. One is, what kind of experience do they have? If they're telling you to invest in real estate, do they have any real estate?
Right.
Secondly, what's the benefit? I loved your example that you used of the banker who tells you keep buying bigger houses and bigger houses. Well, this is a little known fact, but at a certain income level, you lose your mortgage interest deduction. So it's no longer tax deductible. I've had a number of clients who suddenly come to that realization at the end of the year. The banker's advice to keep buying a bigger and bigger house, they lost a deduction because it doesn't count for them anyway.
Right, and this is the hard part you and I talk about, is when a banker says your house is an asset, is your banker lying or telling the truth?
Oh, it is an asset for him.
But it's not your asset, is it?
Yeah.
And it's never your asset because even if you paid off the mortgage, you still owe real estate taxes on it. And so the programming we've been conditioned to from the time we were born, get a safe, secure job, buy a big house, and then because you work harder, your taxes go up, and because your taxes go up, your accountant or your banker will say, buy a bigger house because you get a tax deduction. And that's the programming that I am working against. And what it sounds logical to 90% of the population is the main reason 90% of the population is broke. It's because they've been taking advice from people who are in the same boat as you are. I mean, I've really never met too many rich bankers. I've never met too many rich accountants. I've never met too many rich school teachers. But they're operating on this advice handed down from generation to generation from the industrial age. Well, I'm saying this, by the year 2000, we're going to hit some of the biggest economic changes ever, things we haven't seen yet. And, you know, as Dylan says, you better start swimming or you're going to sink like a stone. These people with 401ks, I don't know if they realize this, but they can be wiped out in the next coming depression, which is overdue right now because we have a depression every 75 years. And the last one was in 1930, so we're about due right now. And if I'm a historian of economic history, and if a person lives to 75 years of age, you will go through two recessions and one depression. Well, the World War II generation, my parents went through their depression, and they understand that's why they were savers. But the baby boomers right now have never really seen a bad down market. And I travel the world, just in Indonesia and in China and Malaysia and Japan, and that crash could happen to us someday. And most people are saying, well, we're America. The trouble is our government has ran up such a debt, counting assets as liabilities and all this, that we're precarious right now. It may not happen, but it also could. And I'm saying prepare for it.
Exactly. And you've got a key point there. We know change is coming. And I think to those listening, the question is how do you react to that? If you're excited by that, if you see a problem you can solve, you will prosper beyond your dreams in this change.
Thanks for saying that, because when I talk about doom and gloom, I'm not talking about doom and gloom. I'm talking about doom and boom. In other words, most people fail to realize is that when the rich really get rich is during times of economic downturn, and they ride the next upturn. And what happens with people who are not financially literate, not financially trained, is they're the ones who come in late to the party and then get wiped out of the top of a market, and then they lose all the money. And the money is transferred. It's transferred from those who are educated, uneducated, to those who are educated financially. That's why in 1987, the stock market crash was the best thing that ever happened to me. Everybody was crying the blues. But what they were losing was being transferred to people like me who had been trained in financial intelligence, all the things that the game cash flow teaches you. So cash flow is really designed to prepare you for these changes coming so that you'll be able to take advantage of the problems rather than look for old answers.
Exactly. And that also brings up another point that's very similar to what we were talking about with education. I know people that decide now after listening to this kind of thing, I think I need to go get an accounting degree. That is the wrong answer. What you need is financial intelligence, just like the emotional intelligence. This is something that's within yourself. It's not something you can learn from a book. You need some skills, basic skills you can learn from the game cash flow. You need to learn how to problem solve. That's the key.
That's right. And so cash flow is really designed for people who want to be A-type investors. If you want to just look for answers, the game will be long, boring, and tedious. The game does not take long. What takes long is learning the game. And I saw this one very high-paid top banker. It took him 6 hours, and the guy never got out of the rat race. And he turned to me and says, "This game is terrible. You know," he says, "it's too slow, it's too long, it's too boring." And I said, "Thank you," and walked off. But he realized most bankers are employees; they're not investors. And what cash flow is really designed for are people who want to become business owners or investors. I think ultimately within 50 years, we're all going to have to be that anyway. The idea of a safe, secure job with the government taking care of you for your retirement is an obsolete idea.
Well, you're really raising some fascinating issues in terms of the learning problem. If I want to learn something new, how do I change my own habits? How do I change my own behaviors? If I've made the choice, I want to do this, and yet I find myself going through the same thought patterns and the same actions. So one of the things that I have discovered in playing cash flow is that if I play cash flow with people who are successful, if I change who it is I'm playing with, I can change my strategies.
Sometimes it's hard for me to look at the real world because most of my friends have lots of money. They're not concerned about bills. They have more than enough money to send their kids to school. They're excited that the economy is going up, and even more excited the economy might come down. And it's a different outlook, a different point of view. They're not looking for security. They're looking for happiness and fun, because for me, cash flow is not a game. Cash flow is really my life, and that's all I ever do.
Cash flow is looking for problems.
That's right.
And that is changing the way I think. So when I say, I'm going to look for a problem, I'm looking in the way the game is played, I'll go for the deals, the harder deals, which give me the opportunity to look for problems. But that brings me to the idea of how do I change the way I feel about these deals. And yes, I get scared. So one of the things that I realize is that practice helps me. So the more I play the game, the more ingenious I become in the strategies that I use. When my first time I played the game, I was dead in the waters after 3 hours, and I never got out of the rat race. The second time I played the game, I got out of the rat race in less than an hour and a half. And it was so stunning for me to have that experience. I couldn't really analyze what I had done differently. It was an unconscious decision. I was stunned. And when I started to get my left brain, my logical analysis involved in it, it took away all the fun I had in experiencing that hit. So one of the things that I have discovered since then is that there's an unconscious process that is going on.
But isn't that what you study in educational psychology? Learning is actually unconscious.
Learning is unconscious. And as a matter of fact, if you try to bring it up to consciousness, you can actually destroy the learning that you've experienced. So I have an intelligence that goes beyond what I think I know. And that's counterintuitive. You know, Robert, as human beings, we can train our brain to see things that our eyes can't see.
That's well said. Is because there's an opportunity of a lifetime right in front of you every minute of the day, except that your brain has not been trained to see it because your eyes can't see it. What you actually see is actually in the brain. It's income statement, balance sheet, it's communication systems, it's taxes. It's all the things the eyes cannot see, and that's why people who can see sometimes are completely blind when it comes to money, when it's sitting right in front of you all the time. So the object of game cash flow is played enough times so you begin to train your brain, number one, to think differently, to look for different goals, and to begin to analyze with your mind what your eyes cannot see. Because there's so much abundance. There's so much opportunity. It really shocks me when somebody says, I don't have money. I can't afford it. What should I buy? And it's because, very simply, I'm not making fun of it, is we've been trained since children to go to school, get good grades, look for a nice, safe, secure job, and expect the company or the government to take care of you. And that's also what we look for if we're programmed to think that way. And cash flow is designed to unprogram that so you can see the bounty and the abundance and the fun right in front of you.
Is when I look out at the world and I see the world is flat, but my brain, my vision, my knowledge is different because I've had the benefit of seeing the earth from the But that's what cash flow can help you bring to your own brain, a different perspective.
If you can get out of the rat race 3 times in a row under an hour, your brain has been to do what they really like. And somebody says, well, what do you do for fun? I said, everything is fun. Because looking you need to learn is how to have money work for you. So that's why I build businesses, and with my businesses, I invest in. And I don't pay much in taxes. They said, well, you can't get a loan. I said, aren't you terrible? Aren't you sad? I said, no. See, to not have a job, to have not much income and pay a little in taxes, to me is very smart. But to the average banker, that's really stupid. But to me, that makes more sense. I have to find a banker who that makes sense to.